Okay, so far we have discussed individual consumer and the demand that it is driving and individual firms and the supply that it is making. If we add up or if we sum up all the consumers demand in an economy, that becomes aggregate demand. And if we sum up all the supply in the economy or all the supply from all the firms in the economy, that becomes aggregate supply. And this study of aggregate demand and supply is known as macroeconomics. So this reading is about macroeconomics, which is aggregate output, prices and economic output. Remember, this aggregate demand is actually the total spending in the economy, or it is the total value of all the goods and services being produced in an economy. So this is the total final value of all the goods and services being produced in an economy. And this is also known as GDP. So GDP, which is gross domestic product, is actually the aggregate demand. It is actually the total value of final goods and services being consumed or produced in an economy. Now the question is that how do we actually measure this GDP or gross domestic product? So there are two approaches to measure GDP. One is your spending approach or expenditure approach, and other is income approach. So one of the approaches is that if I sum up all the expenditures being done in an economy, that makes up GDP. So which would include consumer expenditure plus investments plus government expenditure plus exports minus imports. So this all summed up would tell you the spending in the economy or the total worth of goods and services being produced in the economy. And if I sum them up, C plus I plus G plus X minus M, that gives me total expenditure, and that is my GDP. So this will be the formula for GDP as per expenditure approach. In income approach, we add up all the incomes. So if I add up all the incomes being earned by anyone in the economy, that should also give me the GDP, and answer from both should be the same, because anyone's expenditure should be someone's income. So how do we calculate it based on income, or what is the formula for income? The formula for income approach would be national income plus capital consumption allowance plus statistical discrepancy. Capital consumption allowance is depreciation. So national income, total income being generated plus depreciation, which could have been an income, but due to depreciation it was set it off against the income. So depreciation plus statistical discrepancy, that is any errors due to statistic or any statistical errors. What is national income? National income includes all the income, including employees' income, including corporate and government profits before taxes, interest income, unincorporated business net income, rent, indirect business taxes, less subsidies. So all this income, let it be earned by government, let it be earned by corporate or unincorporated businesses or corporate businesses or anyone. All these, or the individual employees, all these income summed up makes up national income. And then if I add capital consumption allowance to national income, that makes up GDP. So these are two approaches, expenditure and income. Remember these formulas, and especially this one. Make sure you memorize it. This is very, very important. And try remembering these formulas as well. That is national income formula. Within national income, you have personal income as well as government income and corporate income. So if I only want to look at personal income, I can subtract these payments from national income. So if I subtract business taxes, if I subtract corporate income taxes, and if I subtract corporate profits, then I will be left with personal income. So that is excluding the income of government and excluding the income of corporations. Excluding government and corporation incomes would give me personal income, and including another thing, which is transfer payments. What are transfer payments? Transfer payments are the benefits provided by governments to its people. So for example, non-unemployment benefit or social security benefit, any such benefits are known as transfer payment. Those are also a part of personal income. So remember difference between national and personal. Personal would be personal income, national would include personal plus corporate income plus government income. And remember these formulas. Now, once you have generated personal income, then from your personal income you pay some taxes. So the personal disposable income is personal income minus taxes. So once you have paid these taxes, the income that you are remained with is known as personal disposable income, which you can dispose or consume. So in any economy, if personal disposable income goes up, that is a sign that expenditure will go up, or spending will go up, or economy will grow. If personal disposable income goes down, that is a sign that economy may slow down, because people do not have, or consumers do not have enough income to spend. So this is a driver of economic activity, or is an indicator of economic activity. And remember these formulas. C is consumer spending, I investment, G government spending, X export and import. And X minus M are known as net exports. Okay, that is expenditure versus income. When we talk about GDP or any number, that number can either be real or nominal. Nominal means including the impact of inflation, and real means excluding the impact of inflation. And if I have to convert nominal to real and real to nominal, there is certain factor with which I will multiply or divide the number, right? So for example, if I tell you that $100 is nominal and $90 is real. So there is certain factor difference between these two, about 10%, which is due to inflation. That factor is known as GDP deflator. So GDP deflator is that particular factor which helps convert real to nominal and nominal to real. So how do you calculate GDP deflator? Simply speaking, it can be calculated by taking GDP at current prices divided by GDP at base year prices. So if I take GDP at current prices and divide it by GDP at old prices or base year prices, that factor is known as GDP deflator. So that means if I divide current prices, GDP at current prices by GDP deflator, I will get GDP at base year prices. Or if I multiply GDP at base year prices with GDP deflator, I will get GDP at current prices. So which means simply real GDP multiplied by GDP deflator will give me nominal GDP. So it is that ratio between nominal and real GDP. This is nominal and this is real. So ratio between nominal and real GDP is GDP deflator. Any confusion so far? Now let's say if you earn $100 or any consumer earns $100, there can be two actions that consumer can take on those $100, or anyone can take on those $100. Either it can be consumed or it can be saved. So the percentage of the total income which is consumed, let's say 60%, is known as MPC, marginal propensity to consume, and the proportion which is saved is known as MPS, marginal propensity to save. So MPS would be 1 minus MPC and MPC would be 1 minus MPS. Any problem so far up till here? Okay. Okay, so this means that if I take expenditure approach, aggregate demand or GDP will be C plus I plus G plus X minus M. On the other hand, if I take income approach, then what will be income? Income will either be consumed or saved or used to pay taxes. So there will be three components of income: consumption plus saving plus taxes. So this means these two should be equal, right? If this is also GDP and this is also giving me GDP, then these two should be equal. If I equate these two and I cancel out the similar amounts from both the sides, I can arrive at an equation which is G minus T equal S minus I minus X minus M. Remember this equation as well. This is also important. Memorize it. That G minus T equals S minus I minus X minus M. So remember these, all these equations 1, 2 and 3 and this formula. So remember all these formulas. Okay, moving on. Now the question is that how do we actually drive aggregate demand curve? Or how do we drive this aggregate demand curve? Would be a downward sloping demand curve, which would be demand curve for whole economy. So how do we actually drive it? How do we actually make it? Price and output, or the demand curve which is plotted, which plots price against output. So how do we plot demand curve? So demand curve is plotted, aggregate demand curve is plotted using IS curve and LM curve. So starting with IS curve, IS means investment and saving. IS curve is based on the assumption, or it starts with the assumption that savings minus investment have direct relationship with income. That is, it says that if your income increases, saving will increase and investment will also increase. But increase in saving will be higher than increase in income, which means overall S minus I will increase with increase in income. Any confusion so far? So this is the key assumption of IS curve, that S minus I will increase if income increases. Why? Because both will increase, but increase in S will be higher than increase in I. So overall this will increase. So this means if I make a graph in which I plot S minus I on y-axis and income on x-axis, then it should be a straight line because both have direct relationship. Any problem so far? Then it takes another assumption. It says that G minus T plus X minus M will decrease if income increases. Why? Because if income increases, taxes will increase. If taxes increases, this number will decrease. If income increases, people will spend more on imports, luxury imports or high-end imports. So this will increase and so this number will decrease. So it means that if income increases, overall G minus T plus X minus M will decrease. So if I plot another graph on this graph, which is G minus T plus X minus M, this graph will be a downward sloping graph or curve. That means S minus I curve would be upward sloping against income, G minus T plus X minus M would be downward sloping. Any problem so far? This is S minus I curve and this is G minus T plus X minus M. Any problem so far? And this is the output in the economy. And there will be certain real interest rate in the economy as well. Currently, let's say 6%, 10% or whatever. So this is the output at this rate. Now if this real interest rate changes, let's say it is 10%. If this real interest rate changes, for example, this real interest rate goes up. So when interest rate goes up, people save more because they are getting higher return, and investment decreases. Why? Because borrowing rate increases. How do you invest? You invest by borrowing money and then invest. So if that rate has gone up, borrowing rate will increase and so it will be difficult or it will be costly to borrow money and so investment will decrease. So this means that if interest rate goes up, S minus I will increase. If interest rate goes up, S minus I will increase. Why? Because S will increase and I will decrease. So S minus I will increase if interest rate goes up, real interest rate goes up. So when S minus I increases, S minus I will shift upward. Right? So if interest rate has increased from 10 to let's say 12%, then at 12% S minus I will be higher. So S minus I will shift upward. When it shifts upward, output will decrease. This means that if real interest rate increases, output decreases. This is the assumption of IS curve. So IS curve would say that if real interest rate increases, output will decrease. That is, if I plot output against real interest rate, they will have an inverse relationship. Any problem so far? So that means they both would have an inverse relationship. If I plot it for different interest rate, for 6%, this will be output. For 5%, this will be output. For 4%, this will be output. Now, if I plot these on another graph, at 4%, my output is this much. At 5%, my output decreased. At 6%, my output decreased further. So I will have I can have a graph of real interest rate versus income, which is downward sloping. This is IS curve. This is known as IS curve, which shows you an inverse relationship between real interest rate and income. Now there is another curve which is known as LM curve. What is LM curve? LM curve is based on the assumption that real interest rate has direct relationship with income. It says that income will increase if real interest rate increases if real money supply is constant. So it says that if real money supply is constant, if money is not losing value, then any increase in value, real interest rate would increase the income. This is LM curve. So LM curve has an assumption that real interest rate will increase if income increases. If money supply is constant, that means if M divided by P, which is real money supply, is constant. It means that if prices increase, money supply will also increase. If prices decrease, money supply will also decrease. This ratio will stay constant. However, if real money supply increases, that is if prices go up, then real money supply will decrease. Why? Because if denominator goes up, overall number will go down. So if real money supply decreases, that is if prices increase and real money supply decreases, then LM curve shifts towards left. And if real money supply increases, then LM curve shifts towards right. This means if prices are higher, this will be the LM curve. If prices are lower, this will be the LM curve. And what is IS curve? IS curve is downward sloping. So this means currently you are at this output. Let's say this output is 100. If prices go up, LM curve will shift and your output will now be 80. So that means at the price of P1, your output was 100. And at the price of P2, your output is 80. And at the price of, let's say, call it P2 and P3. And at the price of P1, which is lower than P2, your output is 120. So that means at P1 you have 120 output, at P2 you have 100, at P3 you have 80. So now if I have to plot a curve of price versus income or versus output, it will be P1 and 120, P2 and 100, and P3 and 80. And if I combine this, this will be my aggregate demand curve. So aggregate demand curve is derived using IS curve and LM curve, and this is how we derive it. Key points to remember are that LM curve assumes a direct relationship between real interest rate and income. IS curve assumes an inverse relationship between income and real interest rate. And these two combined help you come up with the aggregate demand against different price levels. Any problem so far? That was about aggregate demand. On the other hand, what is aggregate supply? Aggregate supply is basically the total output in the economy, total production in the economy. Aggregate supply can be very short run or long run. Very short run is the one in which you can increase supply without changing the input resources. So in that case, you can in that case your curve is flat. Why? Because you can increase output because without changing the price, because you do not need to employ more resources to change output. Short run is the one in which at least one factor of production is fixed, but another would change. So as it changes, you employ more resources, your cost will increase, and when your cost increases, your price will increase. So that means in short run aggregate supply, you will increase output only with an increase in price. If price is not increasing, your output will not increase. And long run is the one in which your output is fixed. That means you cannot increase output beyond this point. You have utilized all your resources and now you cannot increase output beyond this point. So long run aggregate supply curve is the potential GDP. Potential GDP means this is the GDP that you can make, highest GDP that you can make with existing potential by employing all the resources. If you are operating below LRAS, that means you are not fully utilizing your potential. Any problem so far? Okay, so what might happen is that in the long run, any organization, any economy would want to reach a point where it is utilizing the potential GDP or full potential to produce GDP. But in short run, your actual GDP may differ from potential GDP. It may be lower than potential GDP. If your actual is lower than potential, that is known as recessionary gap. That means you are not fully utilizing resources, you have more resources to be utilized. And sometimes it might happen that you overutilize resources, that you burn out your resources. When you burn out your resources in short term, your production can go even higher than or even beyond long run aggregate supply level. That is known as inflationary gap. So in both the cases, key idea would be or key target would be to return to equilibrium in between. So recessionary gap happens when you are producing lesser than your potential, inflationary gap when you are producing more than your potential. In recessionary gap, prices would generally be lower, and in inflationary gap, prices would jump up higher. And how does it happen? So what is the equilibrium? Equilibrium is the point at which aggregate supply becomes equal to aggregate demand. So this is your equilibrium point. However, in short run, you may deviate from it. So maybe demand decrease in the economy. So when demand decreases, demand curve shifts left. When demand curve shifts left, you move to another point which is B. Now at B, you are producing Y2, while your equilibrium output is Y1. But your short run equilibrium is set at Y2, so you are producing this. This is known as recessionary gap. That is, your actual output is higher, your actual potential is higher, but you are producing a lower amount. This is the recessionary gap. This gap is known as recessionary gap. And prices, as you see, are lower compared to long run price level. On the other hand, maybe there is a case in which your demand goes up beyond long run aggregate level. So you are currently operating here and now demand curve moves and you start operating at B. When you operate at B, you are producing Y2 while your potential output is Y1. So that means you have moved out of equilibrium. You are producing more than required or you are consuming more than required. And when this happens, prices go up. But obviously, as companies are overburning the resources, so firms are overburning the resources, so they cannot continue doing that. And what they would do, eventually they will have to cut supply at some point of time. And when they cut supply, supply curve moves left, and again an equilibrium is formed at C, which is your long run aggregate level, equilibrium level y1. But this time the equilibrium will be formed with higher prices. So prices will increase. Again it will move to equilibrium, but prices will be higher. This is known as inflationary gap. Any problem so far? And there is one more concept which is related to this, which is stagflation. Stagflation occurs when is the structural fluctuation in real GDP. When the real occurs when structural fluctuations in real GDP are caused by fluctuations in short-term aggregate supply. So as we discussed, that if your aggregate supply curve moves, if firms cut down the aggregate supply curve, then economy would move, economic output will decrease. So it will move from A to B and will operate here at this point of time, at this point. So this means that output has decreased and price level will increase. So when output decreases but price level increases, that is known as stagflation. And this is a major problem. Why is it a major problem? Because this leads to high unemployment and increased inflation. So your prices have increased and unemployment has also increased. Why? Because supply has decreased. So unemployment decreases, unemployment increases, prices increases. When prices increases, it becomes difficult for consumers to afford it. So demand decreases. When demand decreases, companies further cut down supply, supply decreases. And when they cut down supply, unemployment increases further. And as unemployment decreases, now people are unemployed, they cannot afford to buy it, so demand will decrease again. Demand decreases, then firms cut down supply, and when they cut down supply, unemployment increases further. So you enter into a perpetual cycle in which unemployment will continue to increase and demand will continue to decrease, unemployment will continue to increase, and economy will start moving towards recession and crisis, because this cycle will continue if there are no other triggers to turn around the market. So that's why stagflation is a major problem, because it can lead to economic crisis. So what is the solution to the problem of stagflation? Solution is that with decrease in output and rise in unemployment, input cost and wages may decline. So if unemployment is increasing and output is decreasing, then wages will decline. Why would wages decline? Because people would be willing to work at even lower wages, because unemployment is increasing. So when wages decline, companies or firms would have an incentive to increase output again. Why? Because they can produce at lower prices. So as they can produce at lower cost, they will increase output, and when they increase output, supply will again increase, and then it will again reach back to equilibrium. So when supply increases, curve will shift right again, and again an equilibrium will be reached at A. So this is a possibility which may happen, that is, due to this unemployment, cost of production becomes lower. As cost of production becomes lower, firms increase supply again, and as they increase supply again, it again shifts here at A. Or what policy makers can do is that policy makers can intervene, and they can use monetary and fiscal policies to increase aggregate demand. That is, they try to shift aggregate demand upwards or increase aggregate demand. When they increase aggregate demand, or if aggregate demand increases, the aggregate demand curve will shift right and equilibrium will be formed at C. So again you have reached equilibrium level, but the problem with this one is that if policymaker intervenes and increase aggregate demand and form an equilibrium at C, prices will permanently increase to P3. So prices in the economy will permanently increase, and there is no going back from there. And when prices increase, money loses value. So these are the solutions, but both of these, first solution is dependent on whether companies really increase the supply or not. Maybe they choose not to, and maybe unemployment continues to increase. And the second one is dependent have a drawback of prices increasing permanently to a new level. Any problem so far? So remember, inflationary gap, recessionary gap, and stagflation. And last topic in this reading is economic growth and sustainability. We have discussed potential GDP. What is sustainable rate of economic growth? Sustainable rate of economic growth is increase in economy's productive capacity or potential GDP. So what is potential GDP? Potential GDP is the GDP that you can make by optimizing or by reusing all the resources which exist in the economy. And what are the resources? Resources would include human capital. Resources can include natural resources. Resources can include machinery. So land, labor, capital are your labor is human capital. Land, labor, capital, and raw material. These are major resources. So if you potential GDP is the GDP that you can make by utilizing all these resources to their maximum. But how will potential GDP increase? So potential GDP can only increase due to two reasons. One, any of these resources increases, that is you get more land, you find out more natural resources, you use more machinery, you get more human capital, your human capital is becoming educated or skilled. So if any of these, or you are getting more labor, your population is increasing. So if any of the resource increases, then potential GDP will increase. If any of resource increase. Or secondly, if productivity of resources increases. That means you have same number of people, but they have become more productive. You had, for example, 10 million population before and you have 10 million again, but those 10 million have become more productive. They are now producing more of goods. And how does productivity increase? Productivity increase due to technology. So that means key drivers of potential GDP would either be labor or capital, assuming that natural resources and land are fixed factors. So either if labor increases, potential GDP will increase. If capital increases, potential GDP will increase. Or if their productivity increases, that is, if technology comes in, that would increase the potential GDP. So that means there are three major factors of potential GDP growth: labor, capital, technology. Why? Because technology will increase productivity of labor or productivity of capital. So if I have to make output function, output depends on two factors, labor and capital, and the third one, which is technology. This symbol A is for technology, and it is known as total factor productivity. Total factor productivity, remember this terminology. So this A is total factor productivity. If labor increases, output will increase. Capital increases, output will increase. And if none of them increases, but actually total factor productivity increases, then output will again increase. Why? Because their productivity is increasing. This means that growth in potential GDP is would be similar to having growth in technology plus growth in labor plus growth in capital, and this is weight of capital and weight of labor. So growth in potential GDP is approximately growth in technology plus weight of labor into growth in labor plus weight of capital and growth in capital. Any confusion so far? Now next question is that what is long run sustainable growth rate? If you are asked long run sustainable growth rate, it is simply growth in labor plus growth in labor productivity or increase in labor productivity. And the assumption is that if you are employing more of capital, more of machinery, then that machinery will eventually increase productivity of labor and so your output. If technology is coming in, that technology will eventually increase labor productivity. So the assumption behind this formula is that if capital increases, technology increases, anything comes in, that would eventually increase labor productivity and would increase the output. So output increases due to two reasons. Long run sustainable output would increase due to two reasons: labor or labor productivity. That is long term growth rate and labor population plus productivity of labor, that how much are they producing with each unit of input or with each hour. This is long run sustainable growth rate, and remember this formula. This is also very important, you will see it in practice questions. So this is it about the reading. This is simple. Potential GDP is total hours worked multiplied by labor productivity. Potential growth rate is long-term growth rate of labor force plus long-term labor productivity growth rate, which we have discussed. Labor productivity we discussed earlier, that it is output divided by number of hours, that is production per hour, and output per labor or output per labor would be a function of capital per labor and total factor productivity. So this is it. Uh, this is it about the reading.